So, with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse releasing in theaters, it had me wondering, what's my favorite Spider-Man movie? We've thankfully been blessed with so many amazing stories, but that's not restricted to just Spider-Man movies. So for that reason, I'm going to throw in the Venom movies and the Spider-Man PlayStation games. But before we get started with the ranking, I just want to say if you guys enjoyed today's video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and follow my social media to stay updated with my content. Alright, let's get into it. At number 15, I have Morbius. At number 14, I have Venom, Let There Be Carnage. So this movie is kinda terrible. I honestly couldn't even ironically enjoy the film. The sequel is framed as a 90-minute breakup movie between Eddie and Venom, which is honestly a pretty good idea, and I think more superhero movies should be short, fun rides like this. However, the campy tone and the dynamic between Eddie and Venom are more cringe than actually funny, and most of the movie just feels hard to sit through. Woody Harrelson does a good enough job as Cletus Cassidy, as he knows how silly the movie is and just kinda owns the role. Also, the opening scene is actually hilarious. Like, for some reason, they have this other actor playing young Cletus Cassidy, but still have Woody Harrelson do the voiceover, and it just doesn't sync up in the slightest.
They can't do that. They can't take you from me, you're my one bright light.
But at its best, the movie is sometimes ironically enjoyable, but I don't really have much to say about this one. At number 13, I have The Amazing Spider-Man. I was obsessed with this movie when it came out, and upon rewatching it, I don't hate it or anything, but man, it's pretty boring. I honestly was counting down the seconds until Uncle Ben died, because before that, it just wasn't really interesting. Once Peter becomes Spider-Man, it does pick up, and we get to see how great Andrew Garfield is. For instance, I love the scene where Peter saves this little kid from a burning car. It was just a very Spider-Man scene, where he gives this kid his mask and reassures him that everything will be okay, and the way Andrew portrays the character is pretty perfect. Other things I like are scenes with the tension of Peter coming home late due to being Spider-Man. The scene where he comes home busted up and forgets the eggs is the stuff I live and breathe for with Spider-Man. It's just so grounded and simple. Unfortunately, that's pretty much it with my compliments. I don't really have any major criticisms about it. I just think the pace of the story and the overall plot was pretty weak and bland. At number 12, I have Venom. This movie isn't all that bad, as it's just fun. The interactions between Venom and Eddie are top tier. The fight scenes where Eddie is messing people up without even trying to are really entertaining. The action is well directed, and the freaking lobster scene, man, cinema. It's just a combination of a lot of stuff that works and things that are just insanely silly, and it makes for a really enjoyable time. Yeah, the villain is insanely flat and really wasted the talent of Riz Ahmed. Yeah, the side characters are pretty dumb and unengaging. And yeah, sometimes the plot doesn't really make much sense, but still, it's actually not half bad. At number 11, I have The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So I actually do kinda enjoy this movie. Don't get me wrong, it's still a pretty absurd movie, but there's still a fair amount of things to like. Start off, the visuals in this movie are probably the best in any live-action Spider-Man movie. The colors are so vibrant, and every scene just visually pops. As for the villains, I do kinda like how over-the-top Jamie Foxx and Paul Giamatti are in their roles. It's kinda funny how needlessly psychotic and weird they are, and while it isn't actually good, it's fun to watch on screen. I don't like Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin though. And Gwen's death, I kinda like that too. I like seeing a version of Peter that actually decides to be quote-unquote selfish and be with Gwen despite the possible dangers. And almost immediately he sees the drawbacks of his actions. However, he still has to find a way to keep going and persevering despite all the various tragedies. Story-wise, it does suffer quite a bit. The story is pretty convoluted, and I don't like the stuff with the spy parents being the ones to orchestrate the spider bite for Peter. A lot of it just turns into a bunch of nonsense, but I'm just glad his character got redeemed in No Way Home. At number 10, I have Spider-Man Miles Morales. So I realize that some of you may not even know what this is or haven't seen it due to it being a video game, so I'm gonna try to not spoil anything here. But this one was pretty fun. I like that Miles Morales is taking place where Peter can still actively train him, and we get to see Miles forging his own relationships with the people of New York, his family, friends, and how that makes him feel more distinct from Peter. The basic plot is that there's this new criminal organization called the Underground, and how they're feuding with Roxxon to obtain new power sources. The thing with the story is that it really is incredibly simple and something we've seen 100 times before. Good guy tries to do good and bad guys do bad things that the good guy has to stop. There's nothing insanely deep here, and I think that's kind of fine. It's a pretty low-key introduction to Miles learning to fight crime and deal with problems entirely by himself. This is sort of treated as an extended DLC story, so maybe that's why there wasn't an insane amount of stuff that happened to Miles here, but that's fine with me. It's a fun and simple Spider-Man adventure that I didn't really mind. At number 9, I have Spider-Man Far From Home. So the first third of this movie is not all that good. The comedy wasn't working for me, it felt kinda cringe, and every time it felt sincere and heartfelt, it wouldn't linger on it very long. Once Peter fights the fake lava monster though, I feel like it's just really good from that point on. Mysterio is a great villain who's basically just a petty scientist that got screwed over by Tony Stark. A lot of people don't like that another villain is a product of Iron Man, but the whole movie, Peter is thinking Tony is some god that he can never live up to. So him having to fight a villain that was genuinely screwed over by the man he reveres to be amazing was a great idea. The chemistry between MJ and Peter is also really good. The fight scenes and visuals are really unique and immersive, and overall I enjoyed it quite a bit. Film Toter would probably have some beef with me for liking it, as most people on there would argue it's the worst thing to ever grace Spider-Man media, but it's greatly exaggerated in my opinion. Yeah, sure, it's pretty cringe and does needlessly rely on CGI and comedy too much at some points, but there's still so much to like. At number 8, I have Spider-Man 3. So this one's probably a bit of a hot take because I think most people either don't care for this movie or really hate it. I'm not going to talk about it too much here as I already made a video essay on it, but I really enjoyed this film. It may stem from the fact that most Marvel movies kind of feel samey nowadays, but this movie just feels like a movie. Really, it's just so refreshing watching a film like Spider-Man 3 that really feels like it was made by a filmmaker with a lot of personality. Yeah, there's quite a bit of studio interference and the movie can be kinda dumb, but I honestly don't really mind it all that much. There's enough in Spider-Man 3 for me to see what Raimi was going for, and it honestly works for the most part. Despite the creative interference, I still want to sit in this world that Raimi crafted. The environment feels so fresh and lived in, and I love how it's evolved over this time. I just felt how far these characters have come since that first film, and gosh, that ending is perfect. Peter walks into MJ singing at some random restaurant with the two looking at each other, then the movie ends without us knowing what will happen next for them, most likely because the characters also have no idea at this moment either. We're just left in the dark, and I loved it. At number 7, I have Spider-Man Homecoming. Homecoming was and still is my comfort movie. It's so soulful, and it shows that you can be engaging without forcing so much dark drama into it. It's an incredibly fresh yet similar take on this character, and I absolutely love John Watts' vision for this film. I also really love this movie because it feels like the most reminiscent to me of what high school was actually like. The previous two iterations make it seem kinda horrible, and they all lean into this weird high school stereotypes with the jocks, the cheerleading girls, the geeks, and I'm just kinda over those tropes. It's just a nice low-key environment where you get to be with your friends and learn, and that's pretty much what Homecoming depicted. There are also a fair amount of consequences for Peter that revolve around his need to fulfill his responsibility. For example, I love the scene where he takes it upon himself to take out the Vulture without waiting for Tony to do something, and then it goes wrong and he has to face the consequences of that. In that process, he deeply worries Aunt May and he gets in trouble, which leads to a great emotional scene. It's nothing insanely bad or impactful, but that's kinda why I love it. Homecoming simultaneously creates a low-key atmosphere whilst managing to make me care about every action and consequence. And it can get a little dark too, like that car scene with the Vulture. Dang man, I still need to remind myself to breathe every time I watch that scene. Gosh, it's so good. At number 6, I have Spider-Man PS4. I love this take on an older Peter Parker post-college, and it also feels the most Spider-Man to me. For example, the Rogues Gallery alone. We get to see so many traditional Spider-Man villains, and it's a mix of goofy, whimsical, and petty villains that are displayed in the comics, and we get really well fleshed out villains like Doc Ock and Mr. Negative. I also really enjoyed seeing a bit of an older Peter Parker dealing with problems like maintaining a job, paying bills, and dealing with more grown-up problems. It's pretty refreshing. It basically combines everything we love about Spider-Man and just shoves it into one incarnation, and that's what I like the most about it. The story isn't the most engaging at points, mostly because it's meant to fit in a really long game, but overall it's pretty good. Especially the ending scene with Doc Ock on Peter, like, wow, that's the type of drama I want to see more often in Spider-Man media. Brutally heartbreaking, conflicting, and all while making Peter make a decision that will divide his Spider-Man and Peter Parker life. This iteration of Peter was made with such care and precision that I can't help but love it. At number 5, I have Spider-Man No Way Home. No Way Home was a huge surprise. I honestly didn't think They were capable of delivering a solid Spider-Man story, dealing with all the multiversal threats, cameos, and whatever else, and still making it cohesive. But it was actually able to balance everything and turned out to be a top 5 Spider-Man movie for me. Willem Dafoe returning as Green Goblin was probably the highlight, as he's just so threatening and terrifying. The movie is also able to deliver a lot of emotion and impactfulness that just really hit. By the end of the movie, I was just so happy. It gave me everything I could possibly want in a good Spider-Man movie, and it left the character off in a place that I was just so happy with. At number 4, I have Spider-Man. I used to not really care about this movie all that much, but on my rewatch, I just found it to be so incredibly compelling, soulful, innovative, and heartbreaking. Rewatching this movie, only one word kept coming back to my head: iconic. From the upside down kiss in the rain, to Peter shooting his webs for the first time, to the "with great power comes great responsibility" line, Uncle Ben's death, the parade scene, and so many more. I, for some reason, thought the movie was a lot more goofy than it actually was based on my old memory, but there's actually a lot of really fleshed out drama with really serious and dark scenes. And the ending fight between Goblin and Peter goes way harder than it has any right to. The fight is just so raw, and it really feels like Peter won't win this fight because he just gets completely rocked the entire fight, and it's honestly kind of funny. Overall, the movie really brought out a lot of emotion in me, even after all these years, and I just love these movies so much. At number 3, I have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Wow. What a phenomenal movie from beginning to end. The visuals, the animation, the storytelling, everything here is handled with pristine care and passion. I love Spot and Miguel as antagonists, the supporting characters like Gwen or Spider-Punk are excellent, and overall the movie told one of the best superhero stories ever put to screen. The downside is, well, it's not done. This is half of a movie and it definitely shows, but for what it is, gosh, what an experience. And that is all I have to say about it. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts, I did do a video on it, which will be in the description. At number 2, I have Spider-Man 2. Not only is Spider-Man 2 one of my favorite Spider-Man movies, it's also one of my favorite movies. I think this is largely because it's simply a character study of a young adult trying to juggle all this profound responsibility and what that wear and tear does to someone. It's very relatable, funny, extremely well paced, and simply put, iconic. This film has so many memorable shots and scenes that we still actively talk about them, even more than the modern day Spider-Man movies. Everything about this movie is perfect and it embodies all the struggle and drama I love about Spider-Man. At number 1, I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. What more to say about this movie that hasn't already been said? I just think that this is such a perfect film from beginning to end. It really wowed me after decades of Spidey media. We were still able to get something so fresh and innovative. From the really daring, ambitious, and fresh animation that's supposed to look like a comic book come to life, or from making our lead character someone that the audience has barely heard of. This movie easily could have gotten so much more money if it used a more familiar animation style that didn't look so weird, or if it simply starred Peter Parker again. The film simply wasn't about one person, and at the end of the day, it was just a love letter to Spider-Man and everyone who loves the character. Lastly, I admired this movie so much because it came out at a time when I thought we would never top Spider-Man 2 again, and that Spider-Man movies peaked a long time ago. It showed me that as long as studios are willing to take a risk every once in a while, Spider-Man movies will never reach a peak. So that's it, all of the Spider-Man movies ranked. What did you guys think of my list? Did you agree, disagree? How did you guys rank the Spider-Man movies? Whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to know them in the comments below. Peace.